good evening, everyone. It's 7:30, and I'd like to call our December 17th meeting to order. If Marissa, could you kindly go ahead with the roll call? Marissa, I'm not sure if you're on mute or not, but we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, you can.
Sorry about that. Okay, Tara Figueroa, Ashley
Present.
Pasquarella,
Present.
Melissa Oseglio,
Present.
Jonathan Trapp, Amanda Wagner,
Trapp's present.
Dan Wisniewski,
Present.
Susan Neal,
Present.
Lincoln Johnson,
Here.
and Jim Cordone.
I'm here.
Perfect. All right. So we've got a quorum, and we can go ahead and move to public comment. Before we do, I'd just like to quickly, as usual, just review a couple of housekeeping notes. So members of the community are always welcome to speak on topics relating to our mission. We ask that you keep your time to 2 minutes and, of course, be respectful. Bill, do you see anyone there who we might want to let in? Or if you're joining by audio, it's *9.
Yeah, if there's somebody, a member of the public who'd like to speak, you can press the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen or press *9 to raise your hand.
Okay. I know this time of the year is always tricky. We're approaching the end, and so the end of the year. And so, just want to remind the community that if you're ever unable to join for public comment, you always have the option of actually sending us an email. It's really simple. It's just edit@trumbull-ct.gov. And so if there is no one in the public that would like to comment tonight, then we can go ahead and move to reviewing the minutes from our November 12th meeting. The minutes were distributed in the agenda. They're attached on page 3. And I'd like to ask whether any of the members tonight have any corrections to the minutes. Okay. If there are no further corrections, I think we can go ahead and approve them as distributed.
Would you like a motion?
Yes.
I'll move the approval of the minutes as presented of our last meeting.
Okay, so it has been moved by Vice Chair Trapp and seconded by Ashley Pasquarella to approve the minutes as distributed. All in favor, could you just show by hands that you're in favor of that? Okay. Okay, awesome. So we can go ahead and confirm that and show that those minutes have been approved. Secretary Wagner, are there any communication updates to share?
Yes. So hi, everyone. Amanda Wagner. I am the secretary, so I am just going to share a couple of pieces of information. I do have 2 emails that I wanted to share with the group about some opportunities that the town has brought up to us regarding things that we could do. And then the last one that I'm going to bring up is the message that I drafted that I want to be able to put up as our away message. Because I am not checking it daily. I'm checking it every other day because I have too many emails to be checking on a daily basis. Plus, we're not getting a huge influx right now, so I'm trying to monitor that as is. And so I want to be able to get your opinions on that before I post it up. So let's just start off with one of the emails that I received from Sujata. I can share my screen so that way you can see the advertisement. Hold on 1 minute. So the Oxford Consortium for Human Rights is hosting a Zoom webinar about activist leadership in the COVID crisis, which would be very interesting to see how human rights plays a role within this pandemic. And so that is happening tomorrow on the 18th at 1 p.m. our time. There is a link in this email, and I would be happy to share it within the committee, but I wanted to share this as our group because since this is something that we are looking at different identities, human rights, any of us that might be interested in participating in this, I highly recommend registering. Now, I did not click on the link to try to register today, so I don't know if the spots have been filled, but I wanted to share this with the group because Sujata ended up forwarding this over to us to let us know that this is something that we could be interested in to be able to learn a little bit more about maybe some initiatives that we could be able to do within our group. So if any of the committee members want to be able to register, this would be a really great opportunity from Sujata. The other initiative that was sent our way is through Stratford. Stratford ended up hosting earlier this month a conversational piece about redlining. And I'm going to just share their advertisement that was emailed over. And so this was also on the CT post. This is the article that was written. If I can scroll up really quickly. So their CARE, which is Citizens Addressing Racial Equity, ended up organizing this at the beginning of the month to talk a little bit about racial injustice regarding housing disparities. And this was just emailed to us to kind of let us know, like, this would be something really great to be able to have some of these conversation pieces. And they were just curious on whether or not we were going to do some of these lecture series. And so I wanted to share this with the group because I don't think it was our last meeting, but the meeting before, we did talk about trying to bring in some guest speakers, maybe doing a summer series to talk about certain topics. And so I thought that this would be right up the alley, right? So someone had shared this with us. Ellie Grasso was the one that ended up sharing this with us and wanted us to kind of just be aware of what Stratford was doing. And so I thought this would be something that the committee might be interested in knowing about.
Excellent.
The last thing that I have to share is just the away message that I crafted for all of us. It's a really simple away message. I could read it, but I'm just going to share my screen one more time. I know, I'm sorry if I'm bouncing back and forth and you're going to get a little motion sickness. But I want to make sure for those folks that if I speak too fast, they could be able to read it as well. And so I'm just going to share one last time, I promise. This is the message that I created for all of us to be able to share on our email page. Just a quick hello and thank you for emailing Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Task Force. We look forward to connecting with you. We are periodically checking this email account and we'll get back to you within 48 hours. Thanks, edit. And then I put a quote at the end that kind of symbolizes a little bit about what our mission is. I didn't want to put our mission statement because our mission statement is really long. And I would rather it's on our website and it's connected. And if people are going to find our emails, they're going to search on the website where our mission is already posted. I also did not want to put all of our names on it as well, because that created a very long text box after this. So I thought this was the most appealing for an away message. Does anyone have any questions though, or comments, want to make any adjustments to this?
I think it looks Go ahead.
Amanda, I think I would suggest to you that rather than promise we'll get back within 48 hours, we promise that we'll get back to them shortly or soon or something like that. If you get an email on a Friday morning or something, you may not be back to them within 48 hours. And who knows who you might want to talk with before responding, even if the response is not an automated response, but a human response to say, we're going to confer or whatever it may be. You want to just give yourself a little more latitude.
Okay. I like that because you're right. I might not be checking on a Sunday morning. So that's true. Okay. Any other thoughts? Perfect. All right. And that's all that I have for on the communication front.
Amanda Wagner, thank you so much for, monitoring the inbox and sort of being our liaison for communications on the team. I think it's great that you are doing that. So thank you for that update. We can go ahead and move on to the next part of our agenda, which is a quick update on the various commissioner reports and tasks that we've had, that we started, over the course of the last couple of meetings. So the first thing I was hoping to get a quick update on for the group would be around the edit art competition, logo competition. Ashley Pascarella, did you have an update there to share with the group tonight?
So nothing major, but I was thinking about it a lot, and I've been trying to create a document really like a flyer. But here's what I was thinking, and I know we kind of have addressed this a million times. I'm sorry to be repetitive. I think that we should kind of streamline these things and have them start after we do the community discussion, because I feel like more people are going to get to know us. I know I wanted to talk about this a little bit later, but I think the more people are aware of us and the more that we have like a presence here, because specifically with the logo, like we want people to know us and like know what we're about. And like, I think that part of our group with the discussion is going to be a big deal, but also with, like, I know I spoke last time about the sculpture, the art, the hearts and stuff that we can put in the community. We don't have any money to do that. Like we don't have any fundraising yet. And I hope that we will eventually have a way to get a little bit of backing to support those things. And I've tried to communicate with the art commission. It hasn't happened yet. The lady that works there, I don't think she's really there right now because of COVID. So I'm not super sure what's going on there, but I really want to put together something. So when we have the January 4th, basically open forum that we're doing, I would like to promote this then and put it forward then and say, hey, okay, we did this forum. Now everybody that communicated or participated in this, here's what we're doing. We're going to have this competition for the logo. So that's kind of where I'm at with this right now. I don't know if anybody else has any ideas or thoughts, but
yeah, I think it's great to do a shameless plug during the.
I know. Sorry, it sounds bad.
During the 14th public hearing.
Mm-hmm.
I think, the more that we can have organized, if, at least a timeline, general requirements, that way when we're actually the plug, there are some that we can provide to people.
So I was thinking,
however,
I thought a month would be a good amount of time to do the contest. So we start on January 14th. We end on, I guess it would be Valentine's Day. That would be a month, which would be so.
The only thing that I'm seeing, and also allow other members to weigh in, is that our next actual regular meeting won't be until after the public hearing. And so in order for us to actually weigh in on the timeline and some of the other elements that would be needed to move it forward, so maybe I could, suggest that on January 14th, we tee up the idea with the public, something along the lines of more information to come. And then for the meeting that we have on January 21, have a proposal for the group to review just on sort of what are the general guidelines and criteria and things like that.
So I have a question about that really quick. So when we have like in between meetings, I know I talked to Amanda today because I had a question about something, and our kids are in preschool together, which is cute. But when we have in between things, we can't meet as a group without publicly meeting, correct? I'm asking legally, I guess. Right. So, okay. I guess.
Just because we have to be able to allow, everyone to weigh in and provide comment. And I would say on the second point that you had brought up about the budget, The funding piece is sort of secondary, I would say, although it is a very important component. But if there is a proposal that we have and we all agree on it and we want to move that forward to town council to ask for a budget for that, that's certainly something that we could and we should do. So I don't think, we should sort of close ourselves off and say we can't do anything, because it's sort of our ambition during these early foundational stages of meeting are just trying to align on what are the things that we need to do or that we think the community would benefit from.
Well, I know we had talked about this with this is like the long-term art competition, like down the road, not the logo competition, but I know we talked about sponsors too, which I think might be helpful, because I don't really want to spend, this is my opinion, I shouldn't, I guess, maybe push that, but like, I don't necessarily think that people are going to want to spend money for our committee to put toward an art project right now when we haven't done anything, maybe. And again, that might be just my brain thinking whatever, but we could work toward sponsorship again too, right? I mean, hopefully.
I think we need a proposal first before aligning on.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of like understanding exactly what we're talking about, and
Sorry,
so
I was totally jumping ahead of myself there. That was like for the long-term thing, and I apologize, because that's like a dream project.
No, we're all sort of figuring this out. This is our third meeting, so it's great. I love, I'm a big ideas person too, and I think it's great that you're sort of, several steps ahead. There's nothing to apologize there about. But yeah, we can revisit that once we have a better idea, for sure.
So then can we do this then so the discussion's gonna be on the 14th, our meeting's on the 21st. So I will come up with a kind of a generic push for the thing, like more, like you said, more information coming in the future. And then after that meeting and after the discussion before our meeting, I will come up with like a proposal to send to you, and we can talk about it in our next meeting for an actual competition, like the actual write-up for the competition, which is simple. I mean, it shouldn't be like anything major, but after we get like our information, like kind of come up with like, okay, I have an idea for this, like fill in this blank, this is going to be our logo, design it, yourself, that kind of thing. And what groups we're going to do, which I think we discussed before, like I would like to put it in the schools and just put it out there in general for anybody to kind of participate in, because we want to be inclusive, obviously, but does that work for everybody? Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you so much. I'm excited, and I think it'll be a really awesome opportunity to get some engagement. I can't wait to start reviewing the submissions that we get, but
Me too.
that'll be
I'm so excited.
later.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there's nothing more on the arts piece, we can go ahead and move on. So, just to recap, for us and for the public, during our last meeting, each of us volunteered to connect with an initial pool of town leaders, really more than anything to better understand where EDIT can actually support their department's needs and collaborate in line with EDIT's mission. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and run through the list of each commissioner, please give a brief update on your interview and the status, if there are any next steps. I will ask that we try and keep this, 3 to 4 minutes, noting also that notes that I received were also attached to the agenda. And so, the list that I'm running through, it's not ordered in any particular way. I'm just going to go ahead and go off of what was prepared from the minutes of the last meeting. So the first on the list is First Selectman Tesoro's interview with Commissioner Sue Neal and Lincoln Johnson. Could you please give a quick update?
We have moved that to the first week of January. Because of everything going on with COVID and the holidays and everything else, that got moved to the first week of January.
Totally understandable. So we'll look forward to hearing on the summary of that conversation for our meeting on January 21. Amanda Wagner, on the Board of Education or connecting with the superintendent of our public schools?
Yeah, so I have emailed the superintendent a few times and have not gotten a response yet. However, I have been in touch with a couple of folks that are familiar with the information about the Coalition for Social Justice. And so I'm going to be trying to coordinate that meeting. I had to reschedule it from this past week. We're going to be hopefully meeting sometime after the holidays. I'm going to try to set something up.
Okay. I would say, you know, we should definitely, I know it's an incredibly busy time for the public schools right now, just with, you know, things that are going on with regards to the virus, now with the storm and other things. It's always busy towards the end of the year. You know, perhaps we give Superintendent Semmel the benefit of the doubt and just continue maybe one or, you know, a couple more times before our next meeting and see if you're able to get a response from his office. And then we'll look forward to hearing back on some of the other updates during our next meeting. Okay, Sue Neal, on your meeting with the Board of Finance.
I met with Lainey McHugh, well, by phone, and went over all the questions we had, and most of them do not apply to the Board of Finance. They're a group of volunteers, so when talking about hiring and diversity in the group and all, that none of that really applied. Her main message was that where they see diversity as important is to make sure they understand the diversity of the people they serve. They want to understand the diversity of everyone in the community and what people's needs are, and along those lines, as opposed to trying to make their whatever department diverse, because it's just a matter of people volunteering, so they have no control over who does or doesn't. So that was her main point, just to make sure they all understand the diversity of the community.
Thank you. And can you clarify the role that Lainey McHugh plays on the Board of Finance?
She's the chairman.
Thank you.
I'm not sure that's her title, but she's the head of the Board of Finance. I think it's the chairman. I'm just not sure of her title.
I'm seeing some nods and thumbs up, so I think you got that correct. She must be the chair of the Board of Finance. Excellent. The next interview on the list is actually one that I had volunteered for, an interview with Police Commissioner Chief Lombardo. Unfortunately, just due to scheduling conflicts, I was unable to meet with him, but I'm looking forward to connecting with him in January and providing an update back to you during our next meeting. And it was also the same for the next stakeholder chair of our Human Services Department, Tom McCarthy. I was unable to actually find a time that worked across our schedules for this round, so I'll look forward to providing that update come January. Next on the list is our Town Council Majority and Minority Leaders. Vice Chair Trop, did you have an update on your conversations there?
I do, thank you. I had the pleasure of interviewing the Majority Leader, Jason Marsh, on December 8th. He was generous of his time, and his spirit certainly seemed to be entirely supportive of our efforts. I was very pleased that he could not have been more interested in helping in appropriate ways. He expressed obviously certain limitations on his ability to do that. As Sue suggested with respect to the Board of Finance, the town council is, first of all, it's comprised of volunteers, but second of all, it's got a particular function that focuses especially on finance, tax, budget kinds of issues. And so issues that are near and dear to our mission are not directly in their focus. That having been said, they're obviously sensitive to the issues. They established our task force and remain interested in supporting our mission, at least as the majority leader describes it. And he and I had a good conversation that is reported in great detail in the written submission that is attached to the meeting agenda. And I'm not going to read it all or try to regurgitate all of it, but I would emphasize just a few points from our discussion. One is that Jason suggested that we be sensitive to the imposition, and he didn't use that word, but I draw the inference, the imposition that our efforts will make on the town as we talk to various people. And he has suggested that a way to mitigate that is to talk with the town council about having a liaison on the council who can facilitate our efforts. And this is a theme that was repeated when I get to it in the discussion that I had with Lee Goodman, who leads EMS. I talked with her and Tom McCarthy, who's an HR person today. And so I assume you'll come back to me for that. But what was emphasized in both meetings is the interest in cooperating, the availability of data, but I assured them that we're not about to go serve a bunch of FOIA requests or document demands. We would coordinate with people and try to find an efficient way to pursue our due diligence to try to understand the issues that confront the town. And Jason was very supportive of trying to facilitate that effort, but to do it in a way that made sense. He talked about the fact that he personally is privileged by his own status as a white male. And he and I talked about some of the efforts that have been made to diversify the town council and to take advantage of the diversity that exists in our town. He expressed the fact that historically the commitment has made it difficult to find people who are able to contribute the time and energy that's needed. Only in recent years have we seen more people interested in serving on the council than there are available slots. There are a couple of slots, I think, that are now opening or open. And so it may be possible to continue the efforts to focus on diversity as we fill those slots. Jason was very complimentary of other members on the town council who have been leaders in this area. Joy Colon, Ashley Cariano, and Joe Jerricks in particular, all of whom we know on this task force, who are instrumental in our foundation, and suggested that we continue to liaise with them. And Jason talked very highly about efforts being made within the town, not all of which are visible, but including some that are being led by our Director of Economic and Community Development, Rena Bacalar, related to housing and other initiatives. And I'll just close, I don't want to monopolize, by saying that Jason expressed an interest in continuing to talk to us and an enthusiasm for doing so, and suggested that one of the best ways that we can help is to perform the kind of due diligence that we're doing to look out for best practices at towns like ours, and to bring our learning back to the town council so that they can consider what kinds of legislative actions they might take that will be conducive to the accomplishment of our mission. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I went on at such length about Jason. I should report that I made multiple efforts to speak with the minority leader, Carl Massaro, and have absolutely equal interest in talking with the minority party and soliciting their views and understanding their issues and their concerns. And I'm disappointed to say that I have had absolutely no response or engagement, and I'm afraid that I won't.
Well, thank you for that comprehensive update on your discussion with the town council majority leader. I wonder again, with it being so busy, our previous meeting just ending before the Thanksgiving holiday and, you know, leading up towards the end of the year, if we give Mr. Massaro the benefit of the doubt, maybe just in good faith, reach out one more time in advance of our meeting on January 21, just to ensure that we have an opportunity to hear any initiatives or concerns, or more than anything, just to establish a relationship.
I'll be happy to, and I would add that I anticipate that at our first opportunity to report on our early efforts to the town council, which I think may be upcoming in early January, that may be an opportunity to directly interface with Mr. Massaro and invite him to engage with us. As I said, I'd be delighted to talk with him and learn his perspectives, even if his perspectives are that all is good.
We don't. Yeah. Yeah, we certainly don't know. But I think it's a good point, and noted. We can certainly. I mean, you know, we will be providing a report at some point for sure. So one more effort, I guess, wouldn't hurt, but it'll be great to have a balanced view of things, since we are on the basis of trying to be nonpartisan, as nonpartisan as possible in our efforts. Excellent. So the next department on the list is the Trumbull Health Department. Lincoln Johnson, could you give a quick update on the status of that interview?
Sure, Tara. So I've been in touch with Lucian Bango, and due to all the testing with COVID, I've given her the opportunity to respond in writing, since she was previously provided the questions. Anyway, I resend the questions to her, and she told me that she will get it to me as quickly as she's able to. So I'm just now waiting for her email response to those questions.
Thank you. Yeah, I can appreciate what a busy time it has been. I know we've just set up a COVID testing site in town, and it's tricky. So thank you for that update. The next piece is on emergency responders, and Jonathan, I think you had alluded to the fact that you were able to connect with Lee Goodman, was it, earlier today? Could you give us a quick update on that?
Yes. So Lee also was enthusiastic in her interest in talking with us and in our mission. As you might imagine, she has more than a couple of things going on these days. And so it took a little while to be able to sit down with her, but I was able to do that today. We were joined by Tom McCarthy from HR, who I think would like to be able to sit in on these meetings. And he was also extremely cooperative and I think pleased to talk with us. And I think looks forward to the opportunity to talk with us across the board. You might consider, Tara, whether it's necessary to talk with him separately, since we'll be talking to him multiple times, but I'll leave that to you. In any event, the EMS group, although it's been around since 1976 as a volunteer organization, only recently has come to exist as a more formal department organized the way that it is, with career employees as well as volunteers. It's a relatively large staff. I hadn't appreciated this. It's 45 employees plus a a number of others, bringing the total to over 100. And they have been engaged in the process of filling out that roster in recent months. They have had some difficulty being as diverse as they would like to be. As we would understand, there are certain qualifications and criteria and licensures that are required for people to serve in that capacity, which often can be life and death. And what they have found is that although there has been tremendous interest and enthusiasm, the number of the number of people who, or the group of people who get filtered through and permitted to actually reach the desk of those who are making decisions is much more modest than the number who initially show interest. And some of the diversity of the folks who show interest is depleted by the time the candidates reach a stage where they can be considered. And so the consequence is that the department is a little bit more white and a little bit more male than might be hoped. But there is a plan that Lee is working on to continue to grow and expand and develop the workforce and the office. And she would welcome help in trying to tackle the various issues associated with doing that. She is committed to keeping her eye on the diversity ball, as well as obviously making sure that her employees are qualified and certified. And interestingly, she also emphasized kind, which I think is important for people who are engaging with the community in that way. I intend to summarize the notes and share them with this group before our next meeting for sure, in the near future, I hope. And I'll leave the report, I think, there simply to emphasize that Lee is appreciative of our efforts. She was very grateful to have the opportunity to speak with me, looks forward to whatever support we can provide. And as I indicated, she and Tom both suggested that we try to coordinate our efforts through Tom or through a liaison with the town council, as Jason suggested, so that we can most efficiently accomplish our objectives without taxing the reserves of our administrative departments. While I was speaking with Lee, she had to interrupt for just a minute to provide keys to a vehicle to people who are dealing with the snow. And so she was dealing with an emergency within an emergency, and you just get a sense of how busy they are.
Thank you so much. It's a great update, and I look forward to continuing the discussion with that department. Lincoln Johnson, did you?
Yes, I had a question, Jonathan. Were any of those desired qualifications shared by Lee?
She described to me some of the requirements of the position, which include state licensure or certification, a national registration, and in addition to those requirements, she also described the review process, if you will, that is part of the hiring process, which includes some objective measures. She recited to me an example of a couple of questions that she asks related to medical knowledge or scientific ability. I wish I could repeat those to you, but I can't. I would not pass the test. But there are certain kinds of requirements that are threshold requirements for people to be able to effectively serve in that position. And that has had the consequence of narrowing the field. and she recognizes it as a challenge and one that she hopes to be able to overcome. I should say, I mean, it's not directly relevant to her job performance, but she grew up in South Africa, and at a time when there were obvious racial issues that were being dealt with in very, very significant ways, and she brings that background and that learning to us, and is committed here as she was there to equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Thank you.
Okay, Dan Wisniewski, do you have a update on the food pantry interview?
Yes. So 2 weeks ago, Amanda had sent out an email to the group saying that she, in her talk with social services, she found out that the food pantry falls under that, and she was discussing the food pantry with them. So I concentrated on my other assignment rather than redo work that Amanda was already doing.
Okay, so just to recap, as I understand it, there was a notice that you received, right, that the food pantry falls under another department that one of our other commissioners were already handling. So I'll look forward to that update. I believe, just to consolidate that update, both the food pantry and the senior center are under the jurisdiction of Human Services. So maybe that's a good segue then. Amanda Wagner, would you like to give a quick update on your interview with the point person for Human Services?
Sure. So I ended up touching base with Michelle, who is the director of Human Services. Not only was I with Michelle, I was also with Tom McCarthy as well. He also reiterated to me that he wants to be in as many of the meetings as possible, just from an HR perspective, to be able to make sure that folks are responding and cooperating with us. So he was really stellar in that meeting. I did provide some notes, so those are in our minutes if you are looking to be able to read along for those. I only asked a few questions with them because we had a really great conversation, and we developed, or at least this is my opinion, you might want to talk to Tom and Michelle, but I thought we developed a really good connection and relationship where we established that we would try to reconnect in a couple more months to talk about any more initiatives that might come up. Because as we know, like even in this pandemic, like things are constantly shifting and changing, and their focus is sometimes shifting and changing. So Human Services oversees like social services, the senior center, and the food pantry. And so when we spoke, we talked a little bit about the different initiatives that they are doing. And so I highlighted a little bit about, like, for instance, the senior services focuses on like activities and engagement with our senior folks in the community. Our social services provides resources on benefits, counseling, caregiver services, plus a lot more. Over the course of the last like 9 months, because of the pandemic, they've really been focusing more on emergency relief. And so they provided me with a lot of, Michelle was able to provide me with some data that they provide through the food pantry to better understand the population that they work with, because I thought that that was super important to find out a little bit about the demographics of the folks that are utilizing those resources. And so that was pretty insightful to see a little bit about who's kind of utilizing those resources, particularly about the food pantry, because they have to report to the state about who's coming through, and then the state provides certain parameters. So I learned, this is a bit very eye-opening for me, I learned that in order to utilize the food pantry, you have to have 235% below the poverty line. And I thought that that was really insightful for me to know, because there are plenty of people, and she has the data that shows this, that need assistance but don't meet that poverty line that the state's requiring. And so I thought that that was really unique information that we could potentially utilize in helping them with some initiatives. One of the really awesome things that they were running recently, when I had talked to them around Thanksgiving. They ran an LGBTQ training for staff and for healthcare that was going into senior homes to be able to help with whether it's medicine or what have you. because they noticed that there was an increase of that population within our seniors and they wanted to make sure that the care that was being brought to them kind of intersects with religion. And so I thought that was really fascinating that Michelle brought that up in our meeting as well. So I found that really great. They had 60 people attend, so I commended them. I'm like, good for you. Like, this is great. We need to know more about this so we can also advertise it on our side too. But we're going to try to see if there's a way for us to partner. Maybe we could do some sort of training with their office because they felt wanting to do other trainings of other identities outside of the LGBTQ. Another really interesting fact that they pointed out was thinking about public transportation. They talked about how they've been thinking a little bit about the concerns of their population, particularly with the senior center, about folks trying to get access to their department because there isn't a bus stop right outside their office. The bus stop is several blocks away, which requires a lot of walking if you're in the heat, the snow, the rain, and if folks don't want to go through the elements in order to get to that office, they're missing out on some access. And so I thought that that was really interesting. I know that there have been some interesting ways that some of the seniors have either reached out to friends or family to try to get rides, but if they don't have access to that, who's missing on getting the resources that this office provides, which is extensive. So I'm going to be meeting up with Michelle hopefully in a couple months because we're going to break for holidays and all that jazz, and we'll get back together and talk a little bit more about any other initiatives that might have come up because I didn't want her to just feel like she was on the spot. So I'm hoping we can reconnect and talk a little bit more about some of those other questions we had on the list.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for that update, Amanda. For planning and zoning, Dan Wisniewski, were you able to connect with a lead there?
Yes. So I spoke with planning and zoning, and they referred me up to economic development, which actually oversees planning and zoning. Once again, the name Rena came up as the head of economic development. So she and I and the town planner, looking for that name here. Rena's name is Bacalar, and she and I and where is his name? Robert Lebrandi. He's the town planner, so we have a meeting next Wednesday afternoon, and we're going to go through the questions and everything. And it sounds like she also has some thoughts about what they're doing around diversity in terms of economic development. So I think that'll be an interesting conversation.
Excellent. Thank you. So we'll look forward to receiving the notes from that discussion for our January meeting then.
Okay.
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Next stakeholder interview was for the ADA compliance coordinator and accessibility.
That was
and
me.
Yep.
So that was interesting that Dan just mentioned that because that Roberto Lebrandi is, we eventually found out that that's who the contact was for the ADA compliance. So I have a note out to him to connect. So I guess we'll figure out who's talking what and if it is worthy of a separate meeting or not or whatever. We'll see what he's up for and try to work something out.
If I may suggest, I believe that Mr. Lebrandi is connecting with Dan Wisniewski on the topic of economic development, and he holds another title as the ADA compliance coordinator, so it just seems very different. Mm-hmm. I'll leave it to you to establish, maybe, for the sake of being conscientious of someone's time, but I don't know how that would work in a group conversation to talk about accessibility and ADA in an economic development context. Maybe it works.
Yeah, I'll figure something out with him so we can connect.
Okay, that sounds good. I do have a quick update on my outreach with the Westport team committee, which you might remember from previous conversations. That committee has been around for about 2 decades now. Their mission is very similar to EDIT's, and so we would be remiss not to understand learnings, insights, any suggestions that that group may have for us. I was able to make contact with Mr. Harold Bailey, who is their current chair, and we have a conversation planned in the coming weeks, and the aim is to have Mr. Bailey join our meeting come January 21 to share insights back with us. He did have an ask on whether or not there would be any, specific areas that we would like to hear from him about, either specific initiatives that Westport team has done. I know in previous conversations, we had an open question on their anonymous reporting, for example, so we could potentially get a bit more information on that. I think strategically, it would just be great to have an understanding of where their committee has had success within the town, especially in the early days of starting off. How did they really forge coalitions within town and really be able to effectuate real change? So it's more on that level. Is there any other specific question that you think we should hear from him? And it's sort of more, not just like 10,000 feet above the ground, but each of us have done our own research in terms of what initiatives Westport has done. And so if there is something specific, he has requested that, to give a bit more guidance before just showing up on the 21st and potentially having things prepared for us. Okay. Oh, yes, Jonathan Trupp?
Yeah, I don't have at this moment specific questions about particular initiatives in the town of Westport, but if he's looking for some suggestions for what we would like to hear, I won't speak for all of you, but from my perspective, it would be interesting to hear not only what worked for them, especially in the early going, but I've always understood that one of the best things that you can do is to learn from other people's mistakes so that they don't become your own. I'd love to hear from him about some of the things that are paths not to pursue, what kinds of efforts succeed in a town like Westport, but also what kinds of efforts we ought to maybe deprioritize or not pursue at all.
I thought for a second it could be interesting to explore some sort of joint programming while we're still in the virtual context. Certainly where we could combine forces if that would make sense. We're all in the same county, although I think there's a bit more research that we have to do, and I'll pause on saying anything more on that just because I know, Melissa, you have an update on community programming and your conversation with the Trumbull Public Library.
Yes, so I spoke with Stefan, our library director, and he was terrific. It was a perfect conversation because clearly the way they think about things is the way that we're trying to think about things. He sees the library as really being a hub of information and particularly around cultural, racial, sexual identity education and all of that. So it's clearly we're well aligned in what we're trying to achieve, and he's really receptive to working with us. We talked about some of the things that they've been doing. He mentioned their work developing collections that they specifically highlight. They focus on different upcoming holidays and events that are coming up to make our town aware of them. One of the interesting things that he mentioned was their focus on helping kids understand what people that might look a little different from them, and really try to help encourage them to handle that well and be aware. So they have a partnership with the Kennedy Center where they have members come in and actually read a book each week. And so, of course, the pandemic has messed that up for them. That topic came up. That's his biggest challenge is getting everybody back in person. So they're always looking for new programming, and that was one of the things that I had asked him in terms of data that he could share potentially. We talked about the fact that he could give us information on the programming attendance, so we could see, what our neighbors are most interested in and maybe what they're not interested in, based on those attendance numbers. We can also look into the book and the video checkouts, so we could see how that looks. That might give us some ideas of things that are popping up as interesting at any given time. He mentioned that back in June, their team had posted on social media about the Black Lives Matter protests, and noted that they were pulling together collections about them to try to give people some perspective. And he was happy to report that nothing negative came back. And he said, in fact, people actually reached out proactively in hopes of organizing book groups and requesting specific titles and some advice there. So that was a good positive outcome that he appreciated. They were looking to get into the 1619 project, but then again, the pandemic interrupted that. So they're looking to still work through that. When I asked him about any challenges that he was facing, he was thankful that he didn't have a whole lot to report there. He feels well taken care of by the town, and that he's so supported. He did mention that the Friends of the Library group is in a period of transition, that the group, as it's evolving, and I guess some people are coming out of the group. And so as it's evolving, he's hoping that they can get more involved in programming efforts, so that they have a little more support there. So that was really what he felt was something that he's looking to change going forward. And then beyond that, it's really just the pandemic that has thrown a wrench into all their plans pretty dramatically. But it's definitely going to be an ongoing partnership with them for sure. He's really interested in partnering with us. His team actually is too. So that's our next step, is to meet. His team told him that they were really anxious to talk to us. So I'm setting up a meeting with those guys to talk through what they have in mind, and then we'll go from there and see where it goes.
That's great. I'm so happy that you were able to connect with the library. I know they're a big part of current programming that's already been offered in the town. I might suggest for our next January meeting a quick proposal, maybe on different programs that we would want to collaborate or maybe put forward. A lot of folks in this group, and also maybe even hearing from the public during public comment and having published the agenda in advance, would be able to make suggestions on speakers, and be able to just ensure that, the list of topics that we're collaborating with them are in line with things that we think are a priority. Mm-hmm. Do you think it would work? And I guess it would be good to understand if there is any budget that we should be considering and that sort of thing. So in the proposal, like in addition to just, the basics of overall, if there is a budget that would be required for us to work with town council to secure timeline and topics, I think.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, perfect. So yes, Amanda Wagner, you have a comment?
Had a clarification. So is that for Melissa to work on, or did you want all of us for the January meeting to come up with any, like if we're talking about guest speakers, like if we had any ideas to bring to the table to kind of help with Melissa's programming side, is this just Melissa or is this everybody to try to help out?
Got it. Yeah, thank you for asking that, that point of information. So I think for now, it would be great for Melissa to put together a proposal. I think doing it right now would just be all of us sort of contributing to that process might just be a little bit too arduous for an hour into our regular meeting. So I think it would be great, Melissa, if you could take the first shot at it, and then that way come January, then at that point we could have input as well. I will say if there is something that you feel really passionate about or that you have seen, or for example, the programming that was suggested through the communication, ensuring that, we raise that for a longer conversation during our next meeting, specifically about community programming. Does that work for everyone? Sound like a good process. Okay. Excellent. Okay, and just to recap, what that exercise was all about for us, for, anyone in the community that's sort of thinking about, okay, all these stakeholder interviews, what's going to be done with this information. I think, the first is just establishing relationships within town to understand where edit can be helpful and what strategic initiatives make the most sense for us to pursue. Again, we're such a new committee. I think we had all agreed it made sense to just sort of understand what the current landscape was and hear directly from people that are, managing various departments that affect day-to-day life for the community. And so we didn't want to proactively, move forward with starting to make recommendations without first understanding and having an opportunity to hear from people. That's the first, aspect of it. From here, I think once we get to where we've heard from all of the stakeholders, it would be great to identify 2 to 3 from the list, and looking back at the notes that we received, identifying what would be the highest priority in the near term to really begin to double click on, potentially do a bit more research and get a little bit more in the weeds, if you will, on how we can make a difference. So there were a few topics that I think were pretty clear that came up, but whether or not those are a priority, it's hard to know, unless you sort of have an opportunity to speak with everyone. And so that's sort of, I think, where we are right now. I think it would be premature to already start from this subset of interviews that we've had to then, come up with shortlisting, any one priority. It'll also be good to hear from the Westport team, because I'm sure they, had undergone a similar exercise. And how do you prioritize, right? What sort of, when you're talking about these big initiatives, how do you really say one department or, looking across? Does that make sense to everyone? I sort of rattled off a long explanation, but in my head it made sense. Did that all make sense to you guys in terms of next steps? Okay. So hopefully the aim is by January we would have a recap on the departments, and just to ensure that we're all on the same page. Those would be stakeholder interviews with First Selectman Tesoro, the Trumbull Public Schools, the superintendent specifically, if we're able to, Police Commissioner Lombardo, Director of Human Services, Tom McCarthy, reaching out again to the Town Council Minority Leader for input, the Trumbull Health Department, and Economic Development. Oh, and there was one more, excuse me, the Accessibility and ADA Compliance Coordinator. Okay. Yes, Dan Wisniewski, did I leave a department off?
It would now be a good time to just go over that little organizational tool that I had been working on for primarily the stakeholders info and.
Right. You had mentioned in October that this was something that you thought would be a good way for us to organize all the different conversations and sort of keep us on point and
Right.
track things down. Please,
Right.
this would be
So
a great time.
This will depend on two things. One, if Jonathan got my email earlier this evening, and I'm not sure he did.
I did.
We might for this one. Do we? Mr. Cordone, could.
Well, it was just to send him the document so he could show it because I can't. That was the only reason that we were talking out. We weren't even talking. I just sent him a document and said, "Is it possible for you to share this during the meeting while I talk my way through it because I can't share it."
Got it. Okay, I misunderstood.
That's no problem. We can talk to each other, folks. It's okay. What we can't have is a meeting outside of the meeting. So, but communicating for the purposes of tonight's meeting is completely fine. Thank you.
So then the technical question would be, Jonathan, can you show that to the group and I can talk over it?
The answer to your first question is I got your email and I've got the document up. The answer to the second question is we'll see, but I'll try. And let's see.
If you open up the document and then at the bottom of the Zoom screen, press share screen. Oh, there you go.
No, that part I think I've got. I'm less certain how Dan wants me to navigate around the document, if at all. But
sure. Well, I'll if we can all see that, I'll just kind of talk our way through it. It's actually an Excel spreadsheet, but the idea was to make it look a little bit more almost like a web page, so that it's you go somewhere, you click on something, you go somewhere else, you get data, and then you can go back. So the control panel is actually on the left there. And the idea was we could use this to input our own information if the town allows us to have a shared space somewhere. And then we can, attach documents, attach any quick little thumbnail notes to, I'm using the shareholders interviews as an example for everything, since that's the first project we kind of worked on. So Jonathan, if you go to the left, for instance, if you click on mission, anyone looking at this would then be able to see what our mission statement is as a quick recap for anything they see on this spreadsheet. If you go down to our meeting schedule, then you have a list of all our meetings. And so someone would know when our next meeting was if they wanted to attend. If you went to projects, which actually was is what it defaults to on the right, you would see the projects that we're working on. And Jonathan, you can't click on this because I didn't make anything active on this. But if you clicked on shareholders interviews, you would go to a screen that listed all the share owners, holders that we were speaking to. And if you clicked on that, you would see who of our members was working on it and any data that they had put behind it, like the answers to questions, if that's what we wanted to do. And then every single project would have its own trail that way. Now, Jonathan, if you go, and I'm the only member that's active right now because I didn't want to fill out any information on anyone else. But if you go down the page there and click on my name, you get how I want to be contacted. And that could be any way that each individual member wants to be contacted. And I just put my email. And then under the share owners, holders interviews project, you have the two shareholder shareholders that I'm speaking to. And why there's no metadata behind that, but if you clicked on that, you would then get whatever answers I get next Wednesday from the groups and whatever little thumbnail notes I added to it. So that's sort of what that's a quick overview of sort of what I was thinking as a tool that we could all use that would put this stuff in one spot. Thanks, Jonathan.
I'm glad I was able to do it.
I appreciate it.
Such a fun exercise in collaboration over virtual meetings here. Dan, thank you so much for thinking to do this for the group. I think project management is always an important part of any committee that strives to run multiple work streams with multiple members. I think we'd have to just double check on whether or not we could host this. I think the easiest way to ensure that everyone has access is over like a Google Excel. That way we can all make updates and see updates in real time, as long as we can. I think that might be the easiest way, but I will double check just to make sure that we're good to go with any rules that there may be around this sort of thing. I'm not sure what kind of project management systems the town currently uses, and I need to explore that a bit more to see if we should be instead adopting something that is pre-approved, for example.
Sure.
But on the whole,
it was just a shot at it, and if you get permission or you any feedback is welcome, and I won't do anything more with it until I hear back.
I have to say, it has to be one of the fancier Excel docs that I've seen, and I work for in marketing and analytics, so that goes a long way, actually. Well done, and thank you for doing that. I'll be sure to get the right information from folks in town and circle back to you to see whether or not we have the thumbs up to use that as a project management tool.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Okay, so looking on the agenda, during our last meeting, we surfaced the idea of setting up a business Facebook account that would be used as a bulletin to communicate programming, other initiatives that EDIT is involved in. And if it's still of interest, I'm wondering if anyone would like to bring a motion on the floor. Unless everyone thinks Facebook is evil and we should just steer clear. That's okay too.
Create a business account for EDIT through Facebook.
I second it.
Sorry, who seconded?
I did. Sue.
Thank you. So it has been moved by Amanda Wagner and seconded by Sue Neal to set up a business Facebook account for EDIT. Is there any debate?
Well, the question I have is, are we going to allow comments, or are we just going to have it be a way for us to disperse information and not allow people to comment on things? They could message us, but maybe not comment.
Ashley Pascarella?
So we just went through this with my job this past couple of months. So you can either have a page or a business page. I know Bill probably knows, and other people probably are aware of this. So if we have a business page, people can't just post, I believe, right, Bill? But if we have an actual page, people can. I don't know what we would really want to do there, because I think having a business page seems a little bit against what the point of our group or our task force is. But then again, we might just get some crazy stuff that happens in a lot of other Facebook pages. So
you can't stop posting on your page. Like, no one can post on my page unless they post under something someone else has put, but not even something I put.
Right. But I mean, there is a difference between the actual business page and then like having a Facebook business, which I don't know if we want to do that, or like an actual page. And I don't know that we would want to stop people from postings. That kind of seems counterproductive. I don't know. Just a thought.
So the business page is very much just like a regular page. The town has several of them for, the town has one, Trumbull Community Television has one, Rec Department, Senior Center. A lot of our departments have pages, Police Department, EMS. We do control the content a little bit, so people aren't able to just post their own stuff on our business page, but we do allow comments on something. So if we post an article about the snow parking ban, people are able to comment on that. There are settings to filter out profanity and things like that automatically, and residents are generally pretty responsible with what they're commenting on. It's not like the groups, I think, get more interactive on Facebook. So it's an option, and we can set it up any way you'd like.
Why don't we follow that lead then? If the other town groups are doing this, why don't we follow the lead and just go with that for right now?
Sure, we can do that.
So that leaves the question on who's actually going to manage the Facebook page. And I think there is then a question also on if we're allowing people to post on the page, or rather comment whether or not, how we respond to those as a group. If we respond, whether or not those become like communications that make sense to bring into our meetings if there's a specific topic. So I think those are also things that we have to consider.
I don't think we should probably not respond as a group, I'm thinking, to that, but I think that's a good point. Is maybe it's something that we would bring into like if we're doing public discussions and people want to participate more, because obviously right now they don't know about us, they're not participating. But yeah, I don't think that there would be a reason for us to respond as a group unless it's something that's just, that we stop and I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I think that would be probably a little bit irresponsible for us to respond as a group unless we're having a meeting and responding to it versus responding into a social media page.
I think if we go back to the purpose of like, why are we doing a Facebook page, right? Is it really about relationship building with the community so much as it is to be more of a bulletin, to give people a point and access information that is going to be important and for people that are interested, right? Where it's not going to be like we're blasting this out and forcing people to look at information that we post. But I think the point of managing it is important, and what to do, even if we're not responding to comments, what to do with the comments. Yes, Amanda Wagner?
I think that if we end up I think if we end up creating a business page, I think there definitely needs to be an introduction about what we expect from our comments, right? So like, even though there is filters for profanity, if there is anyone that is going to be like hateful in our comments, we have the right to remove those comments. And so maybe we are not responding, but we have the right to remove certain things, because I could see someone, if we are hosting an event that, let's say we were doing a lecture series and one of it is talking about redlining, right? I'm just using the example from Stratford. So if we're doing something about redlining, someone could come in and could be very negative about that particular event that we're doing. And so I don't want us to be hateful, but we also don't want to be blocking speech either, right? Because there is a freedom of speech. And so you're walking a fine line about what we want to do. Ultimately, I would support, and I'm only going to speak for myself, I would support doing a business page if we are truly doing it as a bulletin to advertise what we are doing, not hosting discussion or public comment. And that way, it's a way for us to be able to get connected to folks, particularly in the middle, like we're in a pandemic right now. I'm not going to print out a bunch of flyers and stick them up across town. One, not environmentally friendly. So I think that we just have to kind of look at that from a couple of different sides there.
I agree completely with you.
I agree too. I think that's what we should do.
Jonathan Trapp, you have a comment?
Yeah, so to add on to what Amanda said, although this is not my area of expertise and Jim may have his own views, it seems to me that if we have a Facebook page as a committee of the town council, of the town government of the town of Trumbull, that we're creating a public forum of a kind that will make it very difficult for us to censor anything on the basis of viewpoint. And if people want to express the view that, redlining is good or something else is bad, we'll have a very difficult time trying to prevent that. And so my view would be that it makes sense to start with baby steps. If we want to have a business Facebook page, let's do that for the purpose of putting our messages out and facilitating engagement with the community that way. And we can always expand that at some point if we decide we're ready to permit comment. But I'd like to crawl before we walk and not leap ahead to something that we're not sure we can control and don't know that what we can expect from it.
Yes, Amanda Wagner.
I have a question for Bill because it's technical. Let me rephrase, sorry. The business page, who would be the admin for that page?
My department would be the admin for the page. Every Facebook page requires an actual Facebook account. So we would be the admin and we can make there's different editor permissions. The difference between admin and editor is basically editors can post, admins can do everything, including remove people or add people. So we can add as many editors as we need to. I know on the town page, for instance, there are, I don't know, 4 or 5 different people who have the ability to post on the page. And so we could do that for one person on this committee if they would like to be the point of contact there, or multiple people. Either way works.
That was the reason why I asked that question, was because great, let's set this up. If we're all on board, perfect. But then my follow-up was, well, who is checking it? Because we want to make sure that, like, if there is somebody that's asking a question, like let's say we posted a flyer and we forgot to put the time, and someone put a comment saying like, hey, what time is this at? And nobody responds, then we're looking like we're being like negligent for our event, right? So I want to make sure that if it's all of us that could get access to being an editor, so that way there's multiple eyes seeing something, great. Or if we are going to designate certain people, whether it's me because I'm secretary, it doesn't make it fun.
I would suggest at least having 2 people with editor access in the beginning if this is something we end up adopting, just to ensure in the beginning that we have enough help to be able to manage that page. Social media can end up, being very consuming if we end up getting a great following base, but I don't know that we'll be there come January. We have some work to do. So if I'm just recapping, the conversation so far, it sounds like most of everyone is supportive of hosting a webpage through a Facebook account that is a business account, essentially, on Facebook that will disable any posts that the public is able to make on that page. And rather, we would encourage people to communicate with us directly via email. But the comment function will be turned on in the beginning.
Off.
Catch that?
I thought the comment function would be off.
So business account, no public post to us. So it's sort of a one-way information. And comments would also be turned off in the beginning to just really give us the least amount of engagement, I guess, if you will. I do want to ensure that we still leave the ability to share any posts that we have, that function is available. If the public wants to have a discussion around events or different things that are happening with Edit, I feel like that is important to be able to bring it into other. The point isn't to limit the discussion on it. It's just that us as a body would not be managing that process within our Facebook page. So as long as everyone's comfortable with that. Okay, so I can state the motion as it's been sort of through the discussion, unless there's additional points that people want to raise before we vote. Okay. And I guess a quick reminder that if it's not working, we can always make changes later. So this is not by any means a final thing. Okay, so there is a motion on the floor. Amanda, sorry, we're like 10 people in here. It has been moved by Amanda Wagner to create a Facebook account for Edit. That's a business account. For now, we'll start at just minimal settings, no comments, that sort of thing, on Facebook. And all in favor, could you just show your hands that we're okay with setting up this account? Okay, let the record show that the motion has passed. Okay, excellent. Great. So it's a natural segue, right, to the next piece, which is around the promotion of our January 14th public hearing. This is going to be a wonderful opportunity to hear from perhaps our most important stakeholders within town, the citizens of Trumbull. And so promoting this event and getting the word out is going to be critical to ensure that we're hearing from as much of the community as possible before we continue on with our next meetings and various initiatives. We had surfaced the idea of potentially doing a letter to the editor. Certainly having a Facebook account where we could post this information will be important, but it's sort of, going to be new. And so there is a draft communication that Jonathan Trop was kind enough to pull together for us, and that is a proposed letter to the editor. It was attached to tonight's agenda, but Jonathan, if you have it handy, do you mind just going through the fun challenge of sharing that and reading it for anyone who's joining by phone and may not be able to view?
Happy to. I think that this is it. So is everybody able to see the letter? All right. The top and bottom most parts are not on the screen, but the top is simply to the editor. And for the sake of clarity, this is intended to be to the editor of the Trumbull Times. The letter reads, or the proposed letter as drafted reads, in August, the Town Council established a new committee known as the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Task Force, EDIT for short. The 8 of us are proud to serve as EDIT's inaugural members. During our initial meeting in October, we adopted the following mission statement for EDIT. Quote, Trumbull's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Task Force, EDIT, seeks to foster a more equitable, diverse, and inclusive Trumbull, where all residents will have and feel that they have opportunity and representation by listening to and engaging with community members, researching best practices, supporting education opportunities and initiatives, and advocating to improve inclusivity in Trumbull for all identities, including but not limited to identities based on race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religion, socioeconomic status, and ability. As this mission, close quote, as this mission statement reflects, we regard listening to and engaging with members of our community as central to our mission. We have already begun reaching out to town leaders across the political spectrum, as well as the leaders of various government departments, to discuss their perspectives on equity, diversity, and inclusion in the town of Trumbull. We also would like to hear directly from members of the town. Accordingly, we have established a period for public comment at the beginning of each of our meetings. Our meeting schedule is available on the town website, and it is easy to join us by Zoom using the link available on the website. We encourage members of the public to share with us their views on important issues relating to our mission. Our next regular meeting is January 21st, 2021. Community engagement is so vital to our mission, moreover, that we have set aside January 14, 2021 at 7 p.m. for a special public hearing for the purpose of receiving input from town members. Please join us by Zoom and share with us your thoughts on how to foster a more equitable, diverse, and inclusive Trumbull. We look forward to hearing from you with proposed signatures from the 8 members of this committee.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, for drafting this letter and for reading it tonight. I do have one quick suggestion. You can, totally optional, but I tend to prefer like the call to action right in the beginning of letters or any sort of like post or anything like that. I wonder if it would be helpful. There are 2 dates in there as well, so January 21st and January 14th. It could get a little bit confusing. I don't know if we move that last paragraph up towards the top. That way people know immediately when they're reading it exactly when and what we're asking. Just a small suggestion, though. I don't know if others have comments on that.
I'll say this. I think that you're right. And I think that one thing I really want to get across, can you unshare, Jonathan, for a second? I really want the whole community to be involved. And I think that the whole community probably won't relate to that letter a lot because it's long, and I'm talking about myself because my attention span's like this big, and I'll be honest, but I think that we want to get our information out there as much as possible and make sure that everyone is included and can be part of this, not just people that read letters to the editor, which is great and awesome, but I don't read the letters to the editor, and I do read the Trumbull Times, but I typically don't read those. So it might be something that's not getting enough flash and attention. And I would really like, and I'm not coming up with a good idea, so this is probably a pointless talk, but like, I want something that's going to flash to everyone here. Like, hey, pay attention to this. This has to do with your community. We all need to be part of this conversation. Everyone in this community, how are we going to do that? And that's, I mean, I definitely agree with that we should do that, but how are we going to do that? Does anybody else feel that way? Like, how can we get that out to more people?
And people are incentive, having some sort of incentive to join in. So really making what that incentive is clear, I think will be important. Yes, Jonathan?
So I'll respond to Ashley's suggestion, which I appreciate. And I have a concrete thought about how we might try to achieve her objective, which I think is consistent with my effort to draft a letter to the editor. We can then come back to the question about exactly what the letter to the editor ought to be to encourage people to read the darn thing. But
sorry, I know you're like, it's very smart and brilliant. I just want, sorry.
Well, thank you for that. I'm not worried about that particular aspect of it at the moment. But in any event, my point is that if we send a letter to Don Eng and it is actually published in the Trumbull Times, there are 2 things that can happen from that. Certainly one of them is the possibility that Don decides to write an article as well to go along with it. But the second is that the electronic versions of the Trumbull Times can then be shared on various Facebook communities, including Trumbull Talks and Keep Trumbull Real, and I'm sure there are several others. And so the members of this task force can take advantage of the fact that the letter appears and then push it out into the community. And so it seems to me that the entry point into those publicity vehicles is to get it up electronically in the Times and then push it out. As far as whether the letter is written in too highfalutin a way, although that was not my intention, you know, I'm happy to take all feedback and criticism. If there's a suggestion for shortening it in certain useful ways or moving the call to action to the top, I'm happy either to try to turn a draft and find a way to get buy-in, or to receive specific suggestions and address them and then turn a draft. The difficulty I think we have is that the public hearing is January 14th. We're not meeting again until January 21st. So we need to find a way to coordinate without meeting, which we can't do.
Well, we can say that maybe more than one letter to the editor would actually be a good thing. And so that is something that we could do in our own accord, not necessarily have something signed from the group. It's just an idea, just to balance off, to solve for sort of the time warp that all of us will be going through over the next couple of weeks. I think that could be an option, or we can continue down this route and maybe come to an agreement in terms of what changes are required, to sign it as the group.
Maybe we could, sorry.
I think Amanda actually had her hand raised.
Yeah, go ahead.
Doesn't matter. Go ahead, Ashley, you go first and then I'll go.
I was just gonna say, maybe we just do not necessarily a letter to the editor, but just something in the bulletin, like, hey, this is happening, like a paragraph, like one of the paragraphs that Jonathan wrote, just, I was just looking over it again. Or just like 2 sentences, like, hey, this is happening. Please join this, group on January 14th. Simple. Maybe a couple times they put it in so people see it. And I think that, I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to necessarily say dumb it down, but just so it's more approachable, because look, this is the thing with online stuff. People do not have an attention span, is my point. They see one thing, they read it, and that's it. We need to have a bait and click headline. Mm-hmm. They see it, that's it. And that's what we put in the paper a couple times. That's it. That was it.
So what you're saying is we should just have an ad that says win a puppy, and then at the bottom it says just kidding. And
yeah, but basically hey, this is your community, this group, we're going to have a discussion, a public forum, this date, this time, that's it, period. Yeah. Because people lose attention. I wasn't trying to make myself sound like an idiot, but I study this a little bit, and that's what people pay attention to, is 2 sentences, period. That was my point. But I think the letter to the editor is good for a different community, maybe people that really want to read longer things. So that, that's great too. But I think that as far as if we want to make people pay attention, that would be my suggestion.
Amanda Wagner?
So I do like Ashley's suggestion about adding something in addition to the letter of the editor, because I think that what I do like about Jonathan's, while I do agree that it is long, and if I'm reading something on my phone, I'm going to see a lot of this and I'm going to be like, okay, I have no idea what they're asking me, right? But at the same time, he provides context on what edit is. We are very new. If I see something in the post saying that there's a public hearing on edit, but I don't even know what edit is, I'm not going to go, because I don't know anything about it. But if we put something in that says what Ashley's doing, and it says see our letter to the editor for more details or something like that, and now you have Jonathan's that has all this awesome detail about our mission statement, how we meet all the time. Maybe rotate that last paragraph to be up the top, so that way we can say hey, we're asking you to come to this meeting. We've been advertising it, but here's who we are, and this is what we do. I think that's really great, because he's really throwing out some information there that I think that could answer some questions that people might have when they see some kind of advertisement.
Yes, Dan Wisniewski?
So I do agree, and also with my background in communications and a little PR, reaching the most people, the most ways is always the best way. Ashley's idea is a good one for the blurb. I think Amanda's point about Jonathan's letter is also extremely valid, because you need the background information. Has to get out there somehow. And I think Jonathan's point that if we can get Don to also write an article, and we're far enough out where we've got some time to stagger this stuff. And I think that what could be, going back to the initial thought of Ashley, if we just take, we have set, in the last paragraph, we have set aside January 14th at 7 p.m. for a special public hearing for the purpose of receiving input from town members. Move that line up to the end of the first paragraph, which says we're proud to serve as edit's inaugural members. And then the next thing you say is we have set aside January 14th. So there's your call to action in the first paragraph. And then of course, tweak the sentence I just ripped apart in the bottom. Now you've got a letter that's got the call to action. It's the same body of the letter that Jonathan wrote that has all the information. It has your call to action, ends the first paragraph, and you still got those other sources of getting information out to the public.
I wonder too, and that's a great suggestion, Dan. I wonder too, and not to convolute sort of this ongoing debate on how and what's the best way to promote the hearing. I do wonder whether we have made it clear in terms of what the ask is. I mean, obviously we want people to come and join and share their input, but what does that mean? Like, do we just want them to, maybe identifying that we're looking for ideas that are specific to, and I'm just throwing this out here, I'm not saying this is what it has to be, but if it's specific to A, community programming, or B, strategic initiatives within town, bring us one idea. Right, that's the ask. That's what we're here to talk about, and sort of providing context on its mission, I think, is important. So clarifying, this is strategic initiatives with regard to making Trumbull a more equitable, diverse, and inclusive town could be worth just clarifying. But I think that that's super important, right? So that people know exactly what they're going to be joining to contribute.
I think that's in Ashley's blurb, like come and give us your opinion, exclamation point or something like that, and keep it out of the letter to the editor, because that's intense information, and let Don's, the reporter, he's going to find what he sees as the story.
This really isn't legal advice, but if I may offer a thought.
Thank you. Of course.
I think if you're going to launch the Facebook page, of course, that will be a vehicle, right, to put this out there. So the sooner we get that up and running. Also, each of you as individuals and members of this commission can reach out to folks that you think should participate and ask them to come. And it could just be a phone call or an email to folks that you think should or would want to share their experience or their insights or their concerns. I think that that's certainly one way to do this. And I guess the third thought I would offer to you is this is an opportunity, right, to allow the town to come, the members of the town to come and give some ideas to maybe help you as a committee find some direction. And it doesn't mean it has to be one and the only time you do it. So if, for example, if this doesn't turn out to be as great of an event as we all hoped, it doesn't mean you can't try again, right? Or if it's overwhelming, if there's 1 million people there, you could, put another date out there. So I think that all these options will be available to you after January 14th too. So just a thought.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cordon. Yep, Ashley Pascarella.
Really quick, I think that's a great point. We can do this. We can do it quarterly if we want. I mean, I think that is a good idea. Like, we don't need to just do this one time and be like, this is what everyone thinks, because we're not going to get everyone at one time. So I think that maybe we should do it maybe quarterly or biannually, or, think about that.
I mean, we can see how the first one goes and go from there for sure. Jonathan Trupp, you had a comment?
Well, I'll let Sue speak, and then I'll talk.
Thanks. I just have a quick one. I just got a message saying that we should utilize the town e-blast as a way to reach the most people. And that way there is no comment, there is no disagreeing, there's nothing, but you get your message out there to the most people in town. Those hit the most people, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll certainly be leveraging any of the communication and any of the communications that the town has to offer. So coordinating that through our clerk, and we'll certainly do that. I think the letter to the editor makes sense with the revisions that we discussed, if everyone is okay with Jonathan making those edits and sending it to the Trumbull Times on behalf of our group. Also using Facebook, I think what would be great, so we could post something on there, would be having a quick graphic. I'm happy to put one together or if there's someone else on this group that could easily put something together, just visual. I think some of us are in marketing and have seen there's definitely different engagement rates with certain elements in the post. So if we could just make that like really, visually and user-friendly, that would be great. And that way we can each share it. I would challenge each of us then to reach out to at least 10 people that we think, that live within town, that we think would be interested and would like to come and join, and sharing those details in advance. Yes, Jonathan?
So one of the things I'm learning is that I write like a lawyer. And another thing that I'm learning is that in a world in which we communicate in messages of no more than 288 characters, 300 words may be a lot, which is not how I think of things, because the limits of briefs are in the thousands. But in any event, I have tried while you were all talking to move a few of those 300 words around. And with your permission, I'll share the screen again and see if we do any better. Because I'd like, if possible, I'll say that I agree with Amanda and others who have said that, and Dan, who have said multiple forms of communication is better and they're not mutually exclusive. And so I would like to send a letter to the editor if we can agree on one. And so I don't know, Tara, if you want me to read it again. I did such a great job the first time, but people can see on the screen. Maybe I'll ask Bill, is there anybody who's dialed in?
Yes, there's one resident who's watching right now on Zoom, and I'm sure there's probably some people on Facebook.
Well,
yeah.
If they're on Facebook, can they see my screen?
Yes, they can see what you see here.
And if they're on Zoom, they can see my screen.
Correct.
So I'll let the screen speak for itself then, if there's nobody who's on the phone.
Sure, and maybe I'll just add that we'll include the final copy in the minutes from the agenda. And so if anyone's curious at taking a look and didn't have an opportunity to see tonight, that will be included.
Ideally, they'll see it in the Trumbull Times, but go ahead and take a minute and read it and let me know if this helps to accomplish the objective or not.
Excuse me, Bill, do you know how many people actually actually received the email blasts? How many people are on that list?
I believe it's about 2,500. I can check for you.
You have to sign up to be part of the email blasts, correct?
Yeah.
So then I think that that's also going to miss a big portion if we only do email blasts. I think we should definitely tap into it because that's still 2,500 that we could be able to target, but I think we should definitely do a couple of things.
Yeah, I think that's only one way we should do it. Yeah. And hopefully we hit different people with each method.
Yeah, you're definitely talking about demographics and age too, with the various ways that you use the ways of communicating.
Yeah.
Just to mention really quick, so it says use the Zoom using the link available on the website. I think that should definitely be posted, or if this is a virtual letter to the editor, maybe post that. That's all.
I don't think it exists yet.
Oh, I thought you meant the town website. Wait, I'm confused.
I did, but I don't think that the meeting has been established with a link. I could be wrong.
I believe the meeting has been established already.
Okay. Okay. Because I feel like if there's a link, more people are going to click on it and they're like, oh, hey, let me just see. I'll just do this.
We could link to the actual landing page, though, because that's evergreen and that will have information.
That's why, at least the town website, something, because I mean, a lot of people don't know and they don't go on the town website. I mean, I never did before after the first year I lived here. So they don't know what it is. Just a link there. That's it. I mean, it's simple, but add that.
I'm happy to add parenthetically a URL to the task force landing page.
The URL for the January 14th meeting is on the town website right now.
Thank you, Bill.
And there are about 2,600 people receive the news feed spotlight on the town website. And there are about 3,100 subscribed to a newsletter. We haven't sent a newsletter out in a while, but the 2,600 receive emails every time we post an article to the website. So the spotlight area that you see when you scroll onto the homepage, every time something's posted there, somebody will those 2,600 people receive that. And I'll take this time to plug that. So if you'd like to subscribe to that, just click on the notify me feature and register for whatever you'd like to register for. You can register for calendar notifications, agendas, minutes, things like that. But also the news feeds, which are the best way to get information right off the bat from the town.
Thank you.
Okay, so other than adding a URL to make this a little bit more web friendly, are there any other comments that we have on this proposed letter to the editor?
I think nice job, Jonathan. That's my comment. Very comprehensive.
So I guess to make this more official and clear, I'll make a motion that we approve the submission of this letter over our collective signatures with the text as presented, but revised to include parenthetically a link to the task force landing page where I gather from Bill the Zoom link can be found.
Yeah, the Zoom link is in the town calendar, town meetings area.
So should the URL point to the calendar or is that where it should point?
Either the calendar or directly to the meeting would be fine.
I can send you the details, Jonathan.
All right, well, with an appropriate link to be supplied by Tara.
That was a really long motion. Is there a second?
Amanda Wagner seconds.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can condense the motion. So it has been moved by Jonathan Trop to send the letter to the editor as revised. It will include a link to the Zoom URL, and seconded by Amanda Wagner. If everyone is supportive and in favor of this, could you just, by a show of hands, and Jonathan, do you mind just unsharing so we can see everyone's vote? Awesome. Okay, so all in favor just by a show of hands. Perfect. Okay, so let the record show that we've approved the letter and promotional activities. Okay, excellent. So if there's no other discussion about beyond the letter to editor, beyond letter to the editor on promoting January 14th, I think then that brings us to the end of today's agenda. Yes, Jonathan Trop?
I know it's not on the agenda formally, but I thought it might be helpful to talk about I think, 2 events that we might be engaging with before we're next together for our January 21st meeting. So one of those is the January 14th meeting, the special meeting, which I understand is simply to be public comment, and I don't believe there's any other agenda to that, and so we'll be listening to people in up to 2-minute increments for however long it makes sense to do that. Is there anything else that we anticipate at that meeting?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the whole of the meeting is really, there is no agenda even per se. It really is to forum for the public to come and speak with us along the things that we're asking, right? So input into initiatives that they feel are important. Of course, we already discussed that we would do a shameless plug for an art competition to come. I think, in terms of what we do with the comments, certainly, there will be a recording of that we can then, raise in our following meeting on January 21st. So in that agenda, there would be an opportunity for us to do a debrief on the comments that were heard. And what would be great is actually just thinking a couple steps ahead, having a few of us actually work towards summarizing, creating a written summary of that in a way that actually divvies up into the various initiatives that we have started to think about. So to what regard does a comment, fall under the purview of programming? Are there specific departments, for example, that are coming up in the comments that we then, in follow-up conversations with stakeholders, consider? I mean, it's sort of hard to anticipate where the note-taking or the summaries are going to go without, having sort of like trying to foreshadow here. But essentially from that, we would gather those and summarize the comments that we hear to then discuss them and debrief on our following January 21st meeting.
Thank you. The second event that's taking place before we are together for our next regular meeting is actually 1 week earlier than that. I know that we are intended to report on a quarterly basis to the town council, and their next meeting is January 7th. Have they invited or asked us in some fashion to attend that, or are we anticipating that will be a later event?
I have not received any official update there, so I can follow up actually with members of the town council to see whether then they would be ready for an update in February for their following meeting. That way we have an opportunity to consolidate input that we're receiving from the public hearing. Maybe we get a little bit further with some of the stakeholder interviews, and we also all have an opportunity to review the update, the high-level update that would be presented during that February Town Council meeting.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I simply wanted to raise it so that I don't, this would be our first go around with that. I don't know exactly what to anticipate, but I wanted to have a chance for all of us while we were assembled to support that effort in whatever way was required. And if that effort is going to be in February, then we can work in January to support it.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Are there any other questions or comments before we close? Okay, well, before we close, I do want to wish everyone, this group in particular and beyond, a peaceful and a happy holiday season. I really look forward to connecting with everyone in the new year. Who would like to do the honors?
I'd like to make the motion to end the meeting.
Second, Jonathan Trop.
Okay, awesome. So it's been moved and seconded to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Everyone have a great holiday.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays, guys.
Happy holidays. Happy New Year. Good meeting.